What is up, guys? It has been such a long time. And yeah, I'm kind of sorry for that, but life has been crazy. And in this episode, I'm just going to go over some life updates and the reason why I have not been doing podcasting in a while. Buckle up. I'm your host, Katie Gonzalez, and you're listening to What the Psychology. Alright, so I'm back, and I hope you guys missed me, because I missed you guys, and I have a lot of explaining to do, so let's kind of backtrack here a little bit. So my last episode was August of 2022. Goodness, it's been almost 2 years. And let's see, my last episode I talked about graduating college. I got my bachelor's degree. And I lost my aunt, and I was starting graduate school. And so a lot has happened since then and now, honestly. And so after my aunt passed away, I just really struggled with my mental health and the grieving process. Everything was too hard, and overwhelming to juggle the podcast, to juggle school, grief, and just life in general, and it was just too much, to be honest. I did start going back to therapy, and I started my journey of healing, and honestly, since then, things were going pretty great, and then life has just gotten harder since then, and I just kept telling myself, okay, I'm gonna get back to the podcast, and things just kept happening. So the timeline, my aunt passed in June, end of June 2002. And so she had a terminal diagnosis of cancer. She was kind of up and down for a bit. She was on a brief remission, and then it came back, and we found out a lot of things that she didn't want us to know. She stopped treatment when her cancer came back. Because they told her they could do clinical trials while she was in remission, but she was in remission for such a short period of time, they couldn't really get to do anything, and she just did not want to suffer anymore. So there were a lot of things she didn't tell us, my sisters and I, we were kind of her adopted kids in a sense. She was the aunt that spoiled us and loved on us and gave us great life lessons, and she could never have kids on her own. So we were definitely very close to her. So that was the end of 2022. And in the span of the last 9 months, I have had so much death. And you're going to think this is insane. So the hardest one was my father. My father passed away 9 months ago. Which I know I've mentioned him a lot, that we were getting closer and our relationship was going so well, and we actually made a vow to each other to talk to each other once a week, and so that was hard. With my aunt, any death, any type of death is hard, whether it's expected or not. I feel like when you know someone has a terminal diagnosis, you kind of expect it to happen, but you still grieve. With my dad, it was just sudden and unexpected. It was just completely unexpected. A lot with that, it's just, I feel like it's so much harder because we had no clue, that it was gonna happen. And I don't even think he knew. There were signs that he knew something was wrong with him that we found. But, yeah, so it just happened. Also losing a parent at 28, because right now I'm 29, but there are so many things to unpack. Honestly, and something I have been working in therapy a lot is I kind of get a little jealous and envious of my older sister, because my dad was there when she gave birth to my nephew, and sometimes it's kind of weird when you have male figures besides your partner in the delivery room, but my sister was all for it, he was all for it, and he was so excited to be a grandfather. He was also such a great grandfather to my nephew. There's so many funny clips of them together and my dad playing music and trying to get him kind of into it and them dancing. And honestly, that is never a moment that I will experience because I don't have kids yet. And that's definitely something that my husband and I, we do want to have a family one day. And so that's something really hard to cope with. And I'm trying to find ways to cope with the realities of that and the realities of life without him. And every day it gets a little easier, but some days are so bad. Let's see. I want to go more into like my dad before I talk about all the other deaths, because in total, including my dad, there's like 5 or 6 other people that have passed away in like the last 9 months. Like, it's insane. But more on my dad, like his death had such an effect on me. Like, I've had some mental things before, like depression and anxiety, but I have never really experienced panic attacks in the way that I did when my dad passed. Like, I started having heart palpitations and I thought I was going to die. Like, after he passed away and I came to his condo to kind of help my sister clear out things, like just looking up at the stairs, like my heart was just like, my chest was tightening and I was crying and I literally thought I was going to die. And there have been other moments like that. Like, I even went to the emergency room because on one Sunday I started having chest pains at church, and then it continued on for like the next 2 hours. So I was just like, oh, usually they come and go. And luckily I'm perfectly healthy. Nothing was really wrong with me. They did say it was probably stress and grief related. But I have never experienced that. Even when my aunt passed, like, it was hard and everything, but I did not experience that. And I feel like when it's a parent, oh my gosh, it's so much harder. Like, if you have a parent or a child, it's just a whole nother level. I don't know how else to go about saying that. And I will say, with him and all the others, I have had such a supportive network of friends, family, peers, some of my professors, my dad's friends. Everyone has been wonderful during this time. So let's go over everyone else. So in the last months, right after my dad, I lost 3 friends, one of them being younger than me, a cousin who was younger than me, and a coworker I used to work with, or we were in the same unit, and he was a civilian. And just the overall compounding of grief to include my dad, it is so hard to process. Like, to go through each person, it's so hard to grieve because it's like my dad is like the one that stands out the most. But I feel like I've been able to help other people, but it's so hard when you're like trying to like help yourself at the same time. It's almost the concept of put on your mask first before someone else, and that's what I've kind of had to do. I've had to learn to give myself a lot of grace. A lot of you know how hard I am on myself, and honestly, I have just learned a lot about myself through this process. I have learned what is important in life, just so many lessons that death can bring, and just different ways of coping in different ways. And it's just so crazy because when my dad passed away, so my aunt, let's go with this. My aunt passed a couple months before I started grad school. So in June, right after I graduated. So I go into the graduate semester dealing with death. And then my dad, it's crazy enough, I was actually on vacation, taking some me time. And I was in Branson, Missouri, and I was at this cute little family bed and breakfast, and I just had such a great time. And it's so weird because earlier in the day, I saw this, I can't remember their names. They're like a Celtic group. Really cool, and, you know, just, I've been trying to explore my heritage and stuff like that. And when I was in the gift shop, I saw this tumbler cup, and my dad loved travel cups because he traveled a lot when he would play music. And it said, without music, life would be flat. And, it, you know, a reference to B flat, the musical note. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so funny. Like, I should get that for my dad. But something in my stomach was kind of telling me, no, don't waste the money. Like, you know, it's just weird. So my dad, when I got the call, I was in between semesters. I was in between, I can't even think because right now we're in spring. So we were in between fall and spring semester, I think. I can't even keep my head. No, it was not this semester. It was last semester. Between summer and fall. That's what it... Something like that. Who cares? Who knows? Yeah, I was starting a fall semester. And so it was not even a week. It was a couple days before school was starting. He died on a Thursday. School was starting on Monday. Here I am in Branson, Missouri. My college is in Nebraska, and I was having in-person classes. And my family is in Tennessee. And my dad is divorced. Like, him and my mom are divorced. He was not remarried. And so my sister and I, we are the next of kin. And so I'm like, well, I have to go to Tennessee. I can't just leave my sister hanging. And we have to figure out all his affairs and this and that. And go through his stuff and plan a funeral or whatever. And it was so hard, you guys. It's so tough. And I'm taking a lot of breaths here and kind of some breaks because it's so hard to like relive that and just the stress. And my sister and I, emotions were high. We were kind of fighting a lot because some things are priority to her, some things are priority to me. We had to figure out what my dad wanted because he had no documents, no will, no nothing. And fortunately, there were some things that my sister and I and some, like, my aunt's best friend knew, like comments he had made, like when my aunt passed away. I remember specifically at her funeral him saying, I don't want this. Like, I don't want a funeral. Everyone's sad, and I know people are going to be, but I want it to be about music and fun and sharing stories and things like that. And then later on, I know her best friend was going down to visit her grave, and she asked my dad, hey, do you want to come with me? And his opinion was, she's not there. Like, he didn't want to be buried. It did not seem like it. He wouldn't want us to waste money, so we did end up getting him cremated. We had a celebration of life, which is kind of harder to do because traditionally you go through a funeral director and they help plan the funeral, but we knew my dad did not want that. So we had some drama with a friend of my dad's, and just a lot of craziness, and we were just trying to do the best we could for what my dad wanted, and there was just arguments of a friend of his that wanted things their way, and it was like, no, we know he said this, and we know he believed this, and so it was just a lot of contention, and unfortunately we had to kind of cut ties with that person. There was also a little bit of that when my aunt passed, and just, it's really sad how loss, when you're close to people and their true colors come out, and then you're just like, holy smokes, I did not know there was this side of you. And that has just been such a hard thing also when you lose people because of a loss and because of their actions, and that you have to create boundaries with people, or you have to cut it off because you've given them so many chances and they try to overstep. And yeah, it's just a lot, and I don't really want to bash anyone. That's why I'm not saying names or anything, but it's just been crazy. It's a lot of death. Not only that, like, I had two wonderful professors, I will say, kept me afloat. I had 3 classes. One of the professors was not the best, but whatever, that's another point of contention. But I had 2 that were really great and that really worked with me and encouraged me. And one of them in particular was an in-person class. He would always just have his office open to me, and I would just be venting and crying and just expressing how I felt. And the hardest thing about that was that class was a trauma and crisis class. And so, well, grief is considered trauma, and grief is not linear, which, funny enough, that was one of our final questions, and I almost want to put, oh yeah, true, it is linear, as a joke, but I was like, I'm not going to get points off just for that. I feel like he would know that was a joke, but whatever. The support I had was so amazing from professors, from peers, and there was a point where, some of my peers, like, you can drop classes. Like, it's not too late to drop those classes if you need some time off. Like, this just happened. And I almost did. I strongly considered it. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to make it through. Like, I've never experienced that losing a parent, like, and especially at my young age and my dad's age. Like, my aunt was 58. They were twins, by the way. They were fraternal twins. And my dad was 59. So neither of them made it to 60. And so that kind of puts things into perspective and makes me question my own life. Like, am I going to have a short life? You know? But there are also, one thing therapy taught me was there are good and bad things you can take. Like when someone dies, we tend to put them on a pedestal, which is normal. But we have to think about all the things, the good and the bad. And when it comes to like the bad, like what lessons do we learn from their life? And so for both of my aunt and my dad, like they didn't take care of themselves. And so something I'm carrying through into my life is I need to take care of myself and my health, my mental health, stress management, which is extremely hard. But gotta work on those things. And so I did consider dropping all my classes. I considered taking a semester off. And I really thought about it. And when I thought about that, I was just like, I had a feeling, I always get like gut feelings, and people can call it whatever, intuition or God or spiritual, or maybe it's your loved one telling you, whoever, whatever. Anyway, I get those gut feelings a lot, and I like to say it's intuition, but I just got a feeling that my dad would not want that for me. Funny enough, when my aunt passed, the day of her funeral, it was so hard on my dad, and he had a show to perform, and he couldn't just back out because he's like, what other bass player is going to replace me and learn 13 songs for a live show that was being filmed? Like, it was a big deal. And he's like, Aunt Renee would not want me to not go, because she would want me to do what I love, even though I'm grieving, and that's going to get me through. And so I really came from that perspective of, how did my dad handle, when my aunt passed away? And that was one thing he really did. Like, the day of her funeral, he went and played music. And I just started thinking the pros and cons of if I stop classes or if I don't. And I came to the conclusion of my dad would want me to continue. And also, I will have in-person classes, so I will have to be forced to go and show up and have a routine. And I will be forced to be around people and to be vulnerable and to accept support. And so for me, it was like, I have to go. I have to keep pushing, because one, that's what my dad would want. And two, it would be better off for me emotionally in the grieving process versus if I would have just stayed home by myself and didn't have that support available except for once a week in therapy, when I could have social support and be on a routine and stay persistent in my program. And so I am so glad with my decision, because I really needed that to grow. One particular instance I will say in class was I had friends that were doing a presentation on bereavement and on grief. And after the presentation, my really good friend, she came up to me. She's like, I know that was so hard for you. And she gave me a hug. And it's just like moments like that when people are there for you and you just allow them to be. Also, a funny thing that my therapist told me at the time was, you couldn't go wrong with being in a program where you're filled with people that have a lot of empathy and that usually understand the process of grief. Like, you're kind of in a good spot there. And it was kind of a funny thing we talked about. And I was like, you're right. So, despite all of those things, I'm still getting through. Let's see, today that I am recording, it's May 20th. And May 17th was 9 months. And so he died on August 17th of 2023. And get this is crazy, and I am going to be a mess next month, because Father's Day falls on Sunday, June 16th, and then my dad's 10th month is the next day on that Monday. So I'm in for it. I don't know. For me, it helps to cope by anticipating, because then I can prepare, like, okay, maybe I need to take a day off or something. So, things like that. And it's so crazy because I did a grief episode when I lost my aunt. And I feel like I've learned so much through losing my dad. And it was so much harder. It still is hard. It's never going to be easy. One thing my trauma and crisis professor joked about was, hey, one of the positives you can look at is you're going to be able to really relate to your clients. And I kind of laughed. I was like, I'm going to be an expert on grief by the time I'm done. And there are things I'm thankful for. I'm so glad I was still in a normal semester versus like an internship, because there's no way I could have seen clients in the state I was in. There's no way I could have dealt with other people's problems. And on that note, yeah, I lost my dad. I've lost 3 friends, an ex-coworker, and a cousin, all in the span of 9 months. And I still have not fully processed the others because my dad's been the hardest, and it's the one that I have been the closest to. But the others I've definitely grieved for as well. And it's just a process, to be honest. So I want to kind of move on to life as it is right now. And these are more updates. Like, life is just hard. Life is just crazy. Life is change. Okay? And so recently, my husband decided to join the military. So I am now a military veteran and military spouse. So my husband did join the military, and he's active duty. And so what this means is that we have moved states and have moved homes. And he was actually gone in training during some of the most difficult parts of my grief journey. Especially the holidays were really hard. But I did get to spend a lot of time with my dad's family and just be there with them. And also, my cousin just passed, and she's on that side of the family. And so we were all just grieving my dad and her. And so we were just all there for each other. We also had some fun, and just being around family was really helpful for me, especially the connections to my dad. And just hearing stories about my dad growing up and things like that. When my husband, he did come home, and I will say, like, me being alone and having to learn how to deal with my grief has been so powerful, because I have really learned how strong I am. Like, I feel like I have never really given myself enough credit on how strong I really am. Like, I've come a long way. And one of my friends told me this quote. She's like, 2020, you would be so proud of 2024 you. And for those that don't know, I'm pretty sure I've said it on the podcast. In 2020, I was hospitalized, and so due to like suicidal ideations, and it was really a point of time at rock bottom where I was like, oh gosh, this is serious. I have no control over my thoughts, and I just knew I needed help. Like, it was a time where I'm like, I have to work on myself. And the fact that I am able to go through this grieving process, like back to back and piled on grief, and be able to come out not feeling like I did in 2020 has been a lot. Are there days where I'm sometimes like, man, I wish I was with my dad, or I wish I could see him again, or my aunt? Yes, but is it the point where it's like, oh, I want to join them kind of thing? It has not been at that level, which really shows a lot of progress, and it really shows like how when you look at yourself and you look back and you're just like, oh, this journey I have been on, it's been crazy, and I have grown so much. So, more positive note here. It's crazy, because 2 years ago, when my aunt passed, I was entering my first semester of grad school. My last episode was my first year of grad school. I am now a senior. I am entering my last year of grad school. And it's a very exciting time, because even with all the hardships and the madness and everything, I have worked my butt off. I have maintained all A's, and I have a 4.0 GPA. So, really exciting. And so, for this last year, we have a few classes sprinkled in, but now it's like where we do practicum and internships. And so, this is when I am finally sitting in the other chair. I am no longer sitting in the client chair, although I might still do that, because now that I'm in a new state and still adjusting to everything, I might still need to be in the client chair. But for my role in internship, I finally get to sit in the therapist chair. So it's very exciting. I start next week. I found such an amazing private practice here, and I'm really excited to start. Like, everyone is so nice. My supervisor's like super laid back and chill, and just it feels so comfortable, and I am just really excited. I'm also a little nervous. I feel like that's normal because you kind of get that imposter syndrome of, what if I'm not good enough, or this or that, or what if I'm such a bad therapist? And honestly, I've talked to some of my peers that have already just completed their internship or their first semester practicum, and they're like, honestly, you get so nervous at first, but it's just the basic skills you've learned, and you really learn your style, and as long as you listen to your clients and you just validate them, like, you're gonna do okay. And so, deep breath. I'm gonna do fine. So, I know this has been an impromptu episode, and you guys probably thought I fell out of the face of the earth. But no, I'm still here. I do still plan on doing episodes. I'm going to try to get back into a rhythm. I don't know if I can promise weekly. We'll see. We'll see how things go. But I just wanted you guys to know that I still think about you guys. I still care about you. And that I have not forgotten about you guys. And I appreciate my listeners so much. And I really hope you understand all the craziness I've been through. And I hope that this also inspires any of you that are on a crazy life journey. Even with the hardships, we can learn some things. There are definitely some weird things that, since my dad has passed, the other day, it's so weird. Like, whenever I see cardinals, like red cardinals, like the male ones that are bright, I think of my dad. It's always been a thing. And so one day when we first got here to the town that we're now living in, we went into this restaurant and I saw this, they had a decorative red cardinal. I was like, huh, okay, you know. And then later that evening when I was taking Augie out to go potty, there was a red cardinal that was just flying around and kind of landed on the fence. And I was like, huh, okay, kind of weird. I didn't really think much of it, but that night I had a dream about my dad. And I don't even remember the full circumstances of the dream, but I know that in the dream there were two cardinals. Like, it showed me the two cardinals I saw throughout the day, which I didn't even connect at that time. And it was like, this is a sign kind of thing. And I was like, huh, interesting. So every now and then I still get signs from my dad. Sometimes I will be in his car because we decided I would get his vehicle. And I will be putting on some rap or pop music, and my dad hated both of those genres. And then, like, I will have my phone plugged up, and it will be on Spotify, and then the next few songs will be, like, classic rock, or, like, country, or, like, bluegrass, something that he would have liked, and I'm like, really, Dad? So, kind of just funny things, and it's kind of a nice perspective to think that he is still there or giving me signs. So even with all the life stuff going on right now, I do want to do my best to continue doing the podcast and giving you guys content and information and just learn about true crime and human behavior. And I definitely want to throw in some aspects of therapy and the therapeutic process now that I myself know more about it. And I feel like it can be beneficial for those that may be on the fence about going to therapy or do not know what that looks like and what it can lead to for you. So with that, I'm your host, Katie Gonzalez, and you're listening to What the Psychology.
Stay psyched, y'all!